So that brings us to today's topic.
Session 0.
Session 0. And we should say that this format here is sort of a new approach.
Yeah, new look.
We're going to be
We have this great artwork, the CNC stuff.
Yeah,
and we definitely want to take advantage of using it.
Exactly. And, again, we want to bring more content and do all that sort of stuff. So, we're just looking for a way to bring more information to the channel.
Yeah, the subscribers and the viewers on YouTube and all of our patrons,
Right.
They want to see more and hear more from us, and I want to give it to them. And this, I think, allows us the opportunity to do so. And I know that the people listening already know Derik's very opinionated on stuff. And one of the things that we've talked about in the past and we wanted to film was the Session 0 talk. And I've had discussions when we started prepping for Session 0 for our Friends campaign.
Right. You and I recently started playing in Pathfinder2. Yep. My first time playing.
Yes, you were usually only the GM.
Only been the GM for 2 years. Mm-hmm. So this is my first character.
Yep.
And we were talking about getting ready, the Session 0.
Yep.
Right? Character creation.
Yeah. So let's start there. Session 0 is basically the session before the adventure starts.
That's correct.
And so the idea is that you're going to create your character then, build it from scratch, hopefully, or hypothetically. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
But the idea being that you're doing your characterization with your group, your party, whatever.
Yeah, I also think it's a great opportunity, if it hasn't already been done so, for the GM to kind of let you know, hey, this is what my campaign's about.
It's a big thing, yes.
So expectation setting, number one goal for me. Is this going to be a high fantasy action pulp adventure, two-fisted heroes, a la Indiana Jones? Or is this going to be a very, very deep psychological intrigue-filled campaign with a lot of really long plot arcs that informs your decision a lot about what kind of character do I want to make
Absolutely
for this campaign?
Because I think people are they're starting, they said, oh, Derik's going to run something. All right, I got to start making my character. Well, hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
What is Derik actually running?
Right. Or in this case, our friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that can mean a lot to like, oh, should I be armored up? Are we going to a dungeon? Are we going to exploration?
Right.
Like how what is this kind of campaign?
And this is where you and I kind of, I don't want to say we butted heads.
No, I have a different start, but I think I came around to your point of view, which was at first you're like, all right, let's make characters. I'm like, sweet. So I started making my character. Right, we weren't in there yet.
That's what I'm saying. We discussed that we were going to do this on every other Friday, that we were going to get to play in a game. So you went home and you started
making my character.
Basically making your character.
I was making a dragon or sorcerer with a dragon disciple, the dragon bloodline.
Yep.
Not doing dragon disciple, but I was like, this is going to be so sweet. Right. I'm all about this. And you guys were like, okay, but like, we didn't even talk about anything yet. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to be this. Like, okay, that's great for you.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't think I was petty, but part of me is just like, well, that's very selfish.
It is.
You've just decided that you're going to be this character. And more importantly, you've basically been like, and GM, this is my character. You need to make sure that your campaign accommodates my needs.
Yep.
And this is, by the way, even worse when someone goes and says, oh, I'm going to be playing a new campaign. I'm going to build my character before I even show up, before I've even talked to anybody. Oh, also, here's my 3-story page background.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
And I want, I want my GM to incorporate all these really cool things into their campaign. What?
Yeah, and I think the worst thing actually too is like that. I guess that's fine if like some people, let's say one person did it, probably not the end of the world. But if like 3 people did that, and now we all showed up with our own selfish takes on characters. Unless the GM is very friendly, you might not survive too long because you don't have a tactic with your group.
Right.
And I think that's why I want to offer a solution. And this is how we came to when I said, okay, I have an idea. And you said, that's great. You should have ideas about what you want. You should have these concepts.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being like, oh, I've always wanted to play a really, really defensive kind of martial character, or a really, really hunter, survival, skill-focused ranger. I also think it would be fun, right? Having ideas is great. Yes. I mean, coming there with an empty slate is cool too. But of course, I mean, we're all excited to play certain types of characters.
Yes.
But I do think it's important. I think it's helpful that you come with loose ideas.
So advice 1, probably not.
Tip number 1.
Probably don't create the full character before you get there.
Yeah.
But definitely have ideas.
Yep.
And then when you get there, next step, talk amongst your group ask the GM for advice on, or sorry, you maybe already know this, what the campaign's going to be about.
Yeah.
And now let's throw the ideas back and forth, which worked very well with the four of us when we got together.
Absolutely.
It was okay. So you're going to do that. Well, then actually this brings us to our next point, but we worked amongst each other and it was really well. So it brings us to the next point, which are, now that we're here, what do you think needs to be decided?
Mm-hmm. Like, what do you mean by that?
Like, should someone be the healer?
Oh, sure.
Should someone be the melee masher?
Yeah.
How are we doing this? What are you picking?
Yeah. Pathfinder2, we're talking about Pathfinder2. That's what the game we're playing, but this applies to any role-playing game.
Yes. This part. Yes.
Which is, most of the role-playing games are designed that you can only fulfill a certain number of roles within your one character. And the game is kind of made so that there are going to be gaps.
Yes.
And, game design has come a long way because, heck, the problem that we're talking about wouldn't even have existed 20 years ago because you used to have to randomly roll for your character stats. Yep. So you couldn't make your character ahead of time because you didn't even know what your statistics were going to be. You could end up with, you're like, I'm going to be this awesome rogue who grew up on the streets and now they're thirsty for treasure and revenge. And then you roll like a 6 dex and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm not being a rogue.
Yeah.
But nowadays with point buy and Pathfinder2, which is literally just not even point buy, you just, as you go through the ancestry background class and then
you basically build what you want.
You just build whatever you want. Mm-hmm. You have an 18 every time. So you can make whatever you want. And I think that leads people to make these kind of selfish, dare I say, selfish choices. But there are gaps in that thing. You need people who can do damage. If everyone makes a defensive fighter character and is like, oh, I don't really do damage, I just support. Yeah. Oh, I don't do damage either, I just protect. It's like, okay, well, someone has to deal damage in this party.
That's what we figured out when we got there. If we all came like I started, then we could have been in some real trouble. But instead we sat down and we're like, okay, Bob has this idea of the sorcerer. He wants to be a spellcaster and try it out. But is anybody going to have like lay on hands or a medicine kit? Like, how are we going to figure this out? Who's doing the damage in our party? And we got to bounce the ideas.
And that is the beautiful thing about Pathfinder2. So when the traditional MMO roles, okay, and 4th edition D&D used exactly these roles, which is again why it got accused of being basically an MMO on tabletop. You have the tank, the defender. You have the striker. You have the DPS, the damage dealer. You have the healer, caster, support type role. Well, Pathfinder 2 can be a little bit more loosey-goosey than that. You really don't have a defender role. MMO defenders are like, oh, I'm going to use a taunt power. The enemies have to attack me. Nothing like that exists in Pathfinder 2. Now, we've talked here previously about how you can use certain skills to make yourself more controlled, but I like to think of it more as that character is just support. They're just supporting what the other party members are doing. Damage dealing characters are all about dealing damage.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then lastly, you have someone who can heal your characters.
Yes.
But again, historically, this was always the cleric. But in Pathfinder 2, it could be the fighter.
Yes.
If they had enough ranks and skill feats in medicine.
Yes. And a medicine kit.
And a medicine kit, what is it called? What is it called? Is it a kit?
I thought it was.
Toolkit? I don't remember what it's called. But the point is that like you want someone who can reliably heal the party. Whether that's through spells, focus spells, medicine. Someone needs to be able to be there.
So in PF2, the champion really a lot of times gets the lay on hands very easily.
Champion gets the lay on hands. The bard gets a focus spell that they can use.
So yeah, the healer and healing I think is a crucial part. And it's great to have like the champion, but other like you said, other people or classes, ancestries can do that. Some better than others, but I think someone, especially how brutal Pathfinder 2 can be, someone should take that role.
Right.
And so you shouldn't just show up like no one picked that one.
Right. You have to be a team player. It's a team game. And I think that that's true for, being able to deal damage as well. You need at least one. I mean, if you're assuming a 4-person party.
We're thinking fighter barbarian here. Are you thinking melee or are you thinking spellcaster?
Anybody. Well, okay. So that's a whole separate.
We'll talk spellcasters.
That's a whole separate kit and caboodle. I mean, in my mind, the primary damage dealers in this edition are martial characters. They are your fighter, your barbarian, your ranger, your rogue. All right. Anybody who has some sort of ability to make multiple attacks or particularly devastating, powerful attacks.
Sneak attack with the rogue.
Sneak attack with the rogue is super legit. You played a ranger with the hunt prey and doing the extra monster hunter damage and all that other stuff. So anybody who can do something like that is going to, you need someone like that. I would say in a 2-person party, you probably want 2 people that can do damage.
Okay.
And then you probably want 2 people who can fulfill a variety of roles, sort of flex roles, support roles. And within that context, you may have 1 or 2 people who have healing capability, right?
Which is good.
Oh, which is great. Why put it all on one person? So if you have a cleric, well, that cleric is going to be able to cast a lot of healing spells, and they're going to be able to cast a lot of support spells. So they kind of fill both roles. You could have a rogue who's also trained really well in medicine. In fact, rogues make great healers in this edition because they get so many skill increases and they get so many skill feats that they can actually take, they can go to expert at level 2 in medicine, and they can take the skill feat at level 2 for like continual healing.
Oh.
Which means you can get the heal check every 10 minutes instead of every once an hour.
Yeah.
Normally you have to wait because you're not expert yet, but the rogue can be expert at level 2 and take the skill feat. So rogues or investigators.
So rogue as it is very flexible.
I don't like rogues.
I know you don't.
But I like them in Pathfinder 2.
So I guess another helpful hint for people at home, or a helpful tip then is to look at the rogue. If that's sort of your style, just picking the rogue, where are you going with it? You're going to go for the DPS. I mean, you sort of could do both, but you need to help fulfill your party.
Yeah.
And we can get to that point in a second. And I wanted to touch base on the spellcasters because there's 4 different schools.
Oh, sure.
And
traditions.
Traditions.
Yeah, traditions. They are
arcane, primal, divine,
and
occult.
You got it.
Okay.
Good.
And they overlap. And this I didn't know at first, but I know that you've talked about this. And so when we were building our characters, you're like, okay, well, we can, if we're all overlapping in the same spells, that might not also be good. Maybe someone should have on the opposites. And I think it's divine is opposite of arcane and occult and primal are opposites. So within the party, you could also have opposites in those schools, because the overlaps are going to, the overlaps will be nice, but the big main groups, maybe say your arcane and divine, we can have a wide range of flexibility within our spells for our whole party. And we can all start doing things. So when we were building ours, it was like, well, what kind of cantrips you take? And I'll take these ones and I'll take these 1st level spells. Now your party has a lot of things it can do very well.
That's right. And even if you look at the traditions, right, there are some types of, like, for example, heroism.
Oh, love that one.
Right. You ironically have that with your dwarf barbarian, but as a self buff through your ancestry feat in our Knights campaign.
Yes.
But heroism is a fantastic buff spell. It lasts 10 minutes. So it's really nice to be able to cast before you even get into a fight, save yourself some actions, not have to cast it beforehand. It gives you a +1 status bonus to pretty much every D20 roll. And it heightens to +2 and eventually to +3. So it is a go-to really great buff. Well, it's occult and divine. So if you have only a primal caster, or if you have only an arcane caster, you're not going to get access to that heroism spell. So it's like, oh, I'm an arcane caster. It's like, okay, well, if we want access to everything else, maybe someone should be a primal caster, or should be a occult caster, or a divine caster, so that we can really spread that out. It's not uncommon for you to have 2 or 3 people capable of casting magic in a party. We have that.
Oh, and that's my point, is that's what I think we should be looking at with these session zeros. And I don't think I was at first. Again, I'm not used to spellcasting. I was like, I'm just going to be the melee guy, and I love being a barbarian. I'm pretty one-dimensional. But now that we sat down, after I learned the game first, I started playing. Now I'm a little more seasoned.
Sure. You're getting there.
I'm getting there. And now we just picked up in our game. Well, now I'm like, I should be using some of this knowledge to our benefit. And as we sit down, it's like, oh, you're right. We should be able to do everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you at home should be able to do everything you can possibly do.
If I had to sum this up for the people at home, build parties, don't build characters.
There you go.
Build a party, don't build characters. Think about it as it's a baseball team. It's a football team. It's not an individual sport, technically, like, you're on a swim team or a bowling team, but really you're playing your own game and you're just trying to do the best you can.
Yeah.
No, this is more of a team sport in the truest sense of the word, where you are going to be filling in for the weaknesses of others and performing a role that's very important. And that role, by the way, doesn't have to be in combat. I know we've talked a lot about combat, but it could be during social situations. It could be during exploration phases. That's a
good transition.
It could be during overland travel.
Because I think the skill checks or the skills are the next big thing to talk about.
Absolutely.
I think when building your character and in that session, we talked about like making sure you divide and conquer. And again, the rogue can just pretty much get everything.
Well, there are
on his
16
list.
outside. If you don't include lore,
yes,
there are 16 different skills in Pathfinder.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably around like the same number, 12 to 15 in 5th edition D&D.
Perfect.
Right.
So idea being that you should diversify.
Yep.
Though maybe a few of them should be in medicine.
Right. Well, yeah, diversify, but have backups. Right.
And this also could be what kind of campaign, back to,
absolutely.
When we were playing our campaign, we were told that we're going to be doing a lot of exploration. We're out in the wilderness. And if we are, I was thinking, well, you might need survival. Multiple people may need survival.
Absolutely.
Nature, stuff like that.
It's such a good idea, because if you know you're going to be doing a lot of overland, a lot of wilderness, a lot of outside the town, then multiple people might have survival or nature, right? You might take more lores like forest lore or mountain lore or, camping lore, because that way you know that you're building yourself into the highest chance of success. On the vice side, if you're in the city,
or I know in AV, we were in the dungeons.
Or in Abomination Vaults.
You need arcane, you need occultism.
That's right.
You need religion.
Right. In a dungeon-based campaign, those could be different skills. Now, I think it's a good idea to have somebody who's good at everything. You know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily need 4 people trained in Arcana.
Yes, I don't think you should, unless it somehow randomly defaults that way. But you shouldn't be looking to do that.
Right, because in most cases, you don't, not everyone's going to be casting recall knowledge. And usually you have one person who has a really high intelligence. Arcana is an intelligence-based skill. It makes sense that they should be the one who says, okay, I'll pick up Arcana because I have the best int. I'm going to have the best stat. But there are other skills that are more selfish by definition. Athletics, acrobatics. These skills don't necessarily help the party. They kind of help you.
Okay.
And I think athletics and acrobatics are a great example. If you get grabbed in a combat.
Yeah, being able to escape.
Escape is an unarmed attack, but it's an acrobatics or an athletics check. Well, your unarmed attack defaults to, your proficiency level. So if you're not like a fighter or a martial character, it's probably pretty low. But if you build up your athletics or your acrobatics, that gives you an out to get out of it. But also the other thing is like, if you're in a fight or you're climbing or there's a rocky area and you're climbing and harpies start attacking you on the wing, or you're fighting an area full of crevasses and pits, it doesn't matter that the fighter has a really high strength and athletics check. How is that going to help me?
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, he's okay. So you need to have some of those more mobility-based, same thing with stealth.
I like stealth.
So.
Well, are there any that people should be looking at?
In terms of?
What do you think one of the best ones to grab is? Okay, so it's like we all started diversified, and I got one left. What should I be putting in?
Okay, well, I'll say this. In my personal opinion, if you look at all the skills, the one that is probably used the most is intimidation.
That's right.
Because it keys to demoralize.
Yes, which is a great non-attack tag action.
Yeah, to apply the frightened condition, right? And now it's charisma basis. So obviously, it's the best for people who are really good at charisma, but that one just comes up a lot. Now, the downside of that is and so it has a great combat potential, but then you can also use it in a social circumstance.
That was kind of my point.
Coerce.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. It has the downside that they are mad at you after you're done, but it's a pretty good skill. In terms of if you're a character who's even remotely good at strength, you got to take athletics because even if you're not built for grabbing and tripping and disarming and shoving, having those as options is incredible.
Yeah.
So I think that those are really, really good.
Okay. Vice versa.
Yeah. What are some of the ones that aren't as good?
Which one's the one you should just? I was thinking thievery.
Yeah. So thievery is the one where it's like
the pick the lock.
Yeah. Well, thievery is one of the ones where it's like the character who should have it should be the person with the highest dex, and then like no one else should take it.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Every time I'm thinking because I'm like, a lot of these performance, depending on the campaign that you're running, I feel like doesn't get used a lot.
Yeah. I mean, again, it depends heavily on if you're in a very rogue-based campaign, deception. Deception's really nice for like a rogue who can then use it as one action so that the enemy's flat-footed to their next attack. And that is pretty good, but it's only really, really useful for them because they have a sneak attack, and inside of a campaign, like the lie ability is pretty doesn't come up. Again, it depends on your
Thievery is
campaign.
the one I thought of. I was just wondering what your opinion was because I was I know we just ran this
I
pick
think
the lock thing. And
I
was
will
like,
say
oh
this:
my God.
if there's an area, you need to have the core 5. Okay, and so the core 5 knowledge skills are Arcana, Nature, Religion, Occultism, and Society.
Okay,
Those 5 skills cover like 90%, 95% of the monsters in the game.
If you set down the party of 4 and no one has those, I feel like you're already setting back. So,
and I think Society, ironically, is probably one of the more important ones because that basically covers all humans and humanoids. So everything from like a goblin to a giant, which has a humanoid trait, falls technically under Society. Arcana is going to handle your weird elementals and dragons. Occultism, your weird creepy crawlies. Religion, your undead, your angels, your demons. And Nature is going to cover all of your animals and beasts. But with those 5, and if you have some people who can, maybe 2 from each, it's like, oh, okay, I don't have to be the person who recalls knowledge here. We have a couple different options within the party. So I think you definitely want to get your bases covered.
That's good. I like hearing that there's a core.
Yeah, those are the core.
Okay.
And I'll say
if
this.
you're a new player, then that's kind of what you're thinking. Like, what should I be looking at?
Right.
I'm a little new to this.
Right. GMing is for the past 2 years. Like those are the checks that I've called for the most in terms of recall knowledge for sure. If you, want another kind of good party building one is craft.
Crafting comes
because
up a lot.
you can use it to, inscribe runes, transfer runes. You can use it to repair shields, armor, weapons that get damaged. Again,
and there's craft checks too for when you find stuff.
Sure.
Crafting.
Identify what it is.
Yep.
But again, probably not something that you need 4 people to have. But
no, 1 to 2.
One
maybe, person probably should have.
Because it's right. Like it's like, oh, we got a rune. It's like, okay, who's going to make the check? Him, the person with the higher skill, the person with the higher stat is going to make the check almost like 90% of the time. Same thing with like diplomacy, like, we need to talk our way past the guard. And it's like, I'm trained in diplomacy. What's your charisma? 10. Well, okay. Well, we're going to let the bard who's trained in diplomacy, but has an 18 charisma. They're going to make the check.
Yeah. They're just
like
a little higher.
9 times out of 10, some of those, some of those skills you only need to do, one time. And so actually, I might run here. I might run like a quick list of what I think, whether it's a group skill that you probably only need 1 or 2 people, or if it's something like an individual that you want a bunch of people here.
Okay. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
There's really only one more big point I wanted to hit up on, which I know is a fun one for you that some people probably won't like, but is the backstory.
Oh yeah.
And for some reason, and I'm new to this because I didn't really ever think about this, people come to session 0 with pages of backstory. Yeah. And I think that, one, that just depends on the group you're playing with, that might be really cool that everyone's doing that and the GM loves it. But I don't like that it's prepared beforehand. I never really worried about a backstory, but I liked personally the one time that Aaron was asking me like 50 questions and I was sort of answering them together with the group and we were sort of just deciding the backstory. But I think ultimately I like sort of like a bullet point of short, quick things, and then the backstory can sort of develop from that, and maybe it develops while you're playing.
Yeah. I obviously have a lot of thoughts on this.
I know.
And, we could probably do a whole other video.
I know.
This. I would guess I'll do the too long didn't read version, and we can go maybe into another video, which is number 1. The most interesting thing about your character should be what they're doing now, not what they did in the past. So, you're an adventurer now. You're a hero now. That should be the coolest thing about your character, not what they used to do.
Yeah.
Number 2, no one really cares about your backstory. You might think it's really great, and people might want to care. They may want to care, but it's just, from a pacing perspective, we don't have time. I'm thinking about my character. I'm thinking about what the GM is talking to me.
Actually, that's what my point is. Like, okay, your 3-page backstory sounds really cool to you.
Yes.
Then my 3-page story sounds really good to me.
Right. And I think
that doesn't really relate.
Yeah. And the most important thing is we play tabletop role-playing games to get together and collaboratively tell stories. You're writing that backstory. You're doing it on your own.
Yeah.
And the story that you can tell is never as cool as a story that your group can tell.
That's what I was thinking. And I remember you saying that before, and I really like that because when the story happens where we're at, and when it's happening, and then I think you've also chimed in like that ties back into a little part of your backstory, but it happened here.
Right.
That's what they remember.
Yeah.
Remember, this guy's really good at something. And it's like, okay, now I saw it, I remember it, and the story kind of grows from there.
Yeah. So I just think I think the play at the table with the dice or in the virtual tabletop with everybody on their camera, what's happening, what's going on, it's way more important than any sort of backstory. And, I think, don't tell me, don't focus on like, don't tell me that you are a certain way. Show me that you are a certain way.
I knew that's where you were going with that.
Right. Like it's like, oh, I've got this cool backstory about how my character is really courageous. And it's like, okay, that's great, but let me see it in play. Don't tell me, show me.
And I think that is better to remember for everyone together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that happens there.
And maybe the fourth point would be, look, the GM's job is hard enough. And if you're coming with this kind of character arc pre-built and you're adding all this extra detail, you're making the GM's job just that much harder. And I'm not saying that I don't think that you should just follow the GM's little story either. I don't think the GM should have a little story. But I just saying like, again, it's a selfish thing. You're saying like, hey, I've got this really cool story that I want to see played out. Well, okay, what about the rest of us? Isn't that why we're getting together? If you really want to see your character story run out, keep writing.
Well, that's my point. I like the backstory that develops.
And then you'll have a novel.
Exactly.
And then you can sell it to somebody. But if you don't, that's what that is. That's called novel writing.
Mm-hmm.
Playing the game is different.
Yeah.
And you don't get there by writing a treatise on your character. I think it can help you, but I think in some ways too, it can limit you.
Yeah.
Because now you're shut down to new cool ideas that open at the table or something that the GM brings up and you suddenly are like, oh, I'd want to go with that. And everyone's going to know about it. You don't have to tell them. They were there. They saw it happen. So yeah.
And I knew I wanted to ask you about it because I knew you're very opinionated.
And that was just my short.
I know.
Short.
So if you join the Discord, by joining the Patreon, you get access to the Discord. You can probably poke Derik for more of his knowledge on that.
Yeah.
But that's basically, I think, session 0 in a nutshell. I think after that, you can finish out your character sheet and then really start getting ready for session 1, which is really the fun.
And I mean, I would say that the other thing about session 0, again, let's recap.
Yep.
Okay. Number 1, session 0 is expectation setting, right? Understand what is this game about? What is the GM telling you it's about? What are your other players sort of interested in? Like what are we expecting out of this game? Number 2, come with ideas.
Yep.
Right? Don't come with a concrete pre-written character.
Yeah. Party building versus character building.
Party building versus character building. Number 3, understand that every character brings in class and ancestries bring different skills to the party. And you want to make sure those are balanced. And you want to make sure certain key areas like damage and support and healing are all covered.
Yep.
And you can do that by picking different skills, picking different classes, picking different spells. There's a lot of different ways to make sure you have sort of all your bases covered. But again, going back to that first point, do it with a mind towards what your GM has told you this campaign is going to be about. And then lastly, I think it's fine to have an idea of where your character came from. But I think like a bullet pointed list is way more effective than a pre-written history. You're putting a lot of pressure on the GM. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. And I think you're going to feel boxed in. Yep. And I think your GM might feel boxed in. And I think it's better to focus on the stories that you're telling as a group than the story that you wrote on your keyboard.
And then jump into session 1 and actually enjoy that story and enjoy the character and the party that you guys built together.
That's right. Exactly. Awesome. Well, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's session 0 in a nutshell. So thank you for being here, Derik, and thank you for everyone for listening. And and if you guys like this, let us know for other things that we can do.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, again, the whole reason that we're doing this is Bob and I have a little bit more free time than some of the other nights. And so we thought we'd get together, kind of a different little look here, a little different little approach, just to kind of talk about specific gaming issues and really kind of go deep into them and share that with the channel.
Yes. And thank you for sharing your knowledge.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up. On behalf of Bob, my name is Derik Melenda, saying welcome to the Knights of Last Call.